Larry Kruger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video. And of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. And also Mojo Fantasy. Mojo Fantasy is the newest and best daily fantasy app. You're going to get a full selection of real sportsbook player props with live odds, including props that you won't find anywhere else. You can ride your picks, cash out, or make new picks all game long. And the best part, you don't have to get all your picks right to win. Try a free contest and win cash prizes up to 25 times your money. You make picks, you make moves, and you make money. Use the link in the description and use that promo code KRUG, K-R-U-E-G, to get your first deposit matched up to $100. All right, Kyle Shanahan spoke on Monday after the Niners rolled to 5-0 and beat the Dallas Cowboys, and the Cleveland Browns are next. And just an update on what's going on in 49er land. First, on the injury front, Shanahan was asked about Aaron Banks. There was a lot of concern Sunday night that Aaron Banks either had a partially torn or a fully torn bicep. And a fully torn bicep is almost a season-ending injury. It's very rare that guys can play with a torn bicep. But it sounds like after looking at things and resting a night on it and looking at it again today, that Aaron Banks got great news that he doesn't have a partially torn bicep. He doesn't have a completely torn bicep. He has a mild shoulder strain, and he's day to day. That's a huge break. Huge break. Banks is having the best year of his career. He's a phenomenal left guard. He's a mainstay on that offensive line. And the fact that he's not going to miss time and that he's day to day with a mild shoulder strain as opposed to a bicep injury is huge. Also, Elijah Mitchell's injury is a knee injury. He hurt it last Thursday in practice. He didn't play the last couple of games. He's considered day-to-day. So they'll take a look at Elijah later in the week to see if he can go. And also Drake Jackson. Kyle was asked about Drake Jackson, and it looked like Drake may have been concussed in the game. Kyle said, you know what? It was just an odd play. He was shaken up. He had the wind knocked out of him. So that's it. Drake is ready to go against the Browns in the next game, week 6 in the NFL. Couple other notes from Ninerland. Kyle Shanahan said he does not believe that opponents are targeting Christian McCaffrey's face mask, despite the fact that it's been grabbed several times in the last month or so. He says, and I really kind of believe him, that really teams are just desperate to stop McCaffrey, and they're just grabbing anything they can find. And a lot of times that means getting their hands up in his face mask, that it's obviously not personal. It's not in any way anything against Christian. It's just about how good he is and how desperate teams are to stop him. And they're having a hard time doing that. And a lot of times the face mask gets grabbed in the process. Kyle was asked an interesting question about whether or not, now that his team is rolling and just came off of a huge win, is there any chance that maybe they'd get too confident? Is he worried about, the Super Bowl talk and the Super Bowl hype and everybody kind of blowing smoke up everybody's butt saying, hey, you know what? You're great. You're great. You're great. And Kyle said, hey, look, this isn't our first rodeo, so to speak. He's like, hey, we got a lot of solid veterans here who've been through a lot of stuff. He referenced 2019 when the Niners started 8-0 and how he believes the veterans in the room will do a great job with the younger players at just making sure that they keep this going a week at a time, not looking too far down the road, not getting caught up, not reading your press clippings and not get a big head. Just continue to focus and do what you can do to win that next game, or really just win every day, whether that be a practice session, a film session, a walkthrough, or actual game day. Just try to win every day. So that was his response. He didn't seem overly concerned about overconfidence. He was asked about what amazes him about Brock Purdy. And he said that, really it's the consistency. It's not that Brock's able to make plays. It's the consistency is unbelievable. And we're talking about a second-year player. And Shanahan said, it's not just about making plays; it's about avoiding negative plays. And the consistency with which Brock does that is really impressive. He consistently avoids negative plays. He consistently is making the right decisions. And he said that really more than anything is what's truly unbelievable is just how consistent Brock is in his second year. I thought that was interesting. He was asked about his offensive line, 49er offensive line. The Dallas Cowboys had a big, physical, fast defensive line, and yet they got one sack and only 2 quarterback pressures in 29 pass rushes. And he just shouted out his O-line, so they did a really good job. That, it was a huge test for them, and that they passed it in flying colors, and he was very impressed by the job that they did. Um, somebody, I think it was Dave Lombardi, asked, are you, Diamador Lenore said that he was thankful that Steve Wilks let his guys play some man-to-man coverage in the second half. And, he said that he was really, really impressed by the tight coverage. And Kyle just, said that obviously Wilks has done it before. Wilks is learning the defense. He's learning what he can and can't do at this point. He's learning the personnel. And he's got total confidence in Wilks to call the game as he sees fit. And he thinks he's getting better as each week goes by at knowing the Niner personnel and what they're capable of and not capable of, and pushing all the right buttons. And yeah, the Niners use some really good man-to-man coverages where they really, were tight in their coverage late in the second half of that game. And we hadn't seen the Niners play a lot of man-to-man, so that was impressive to see. And then he also went on, he was asked another question about Lenore, and he thinks that Lenore is having his best year so far. And he stated it. He said he's been huge for us. He's having his best year so far. Diamador Lenore went and trained at the Mamba Institute down in Southern California in the offseason. The first thing I noticed is that he looks bigger and stronger. And I asked him, hey, did you put on weight? And he's like, actually, I put on muscle and lost weight. So that's exactly what you want to hear. And what you're really talking about there is when you're putting on actual pounds, but losing fat and gaining muscle, you're kind of repositioning your body weight. And Lenore has done that. It's made him faster, more physical, stronger. He's much more of a hitter this year than he was in the past. And I agree with Kyle completely. He has been outstanding this year. And there's no doubt that Diamador Lenore is playing the best football of his career. Kyle was also asked 2 last ones. One was about Randy Gregory, and he said Gregory was flying in on Monday and that he would be out at practice on Wednesday, and he'll be meeting with Chris Kocurek and going through, trying to get him ready to play Sunday against the Browns. And the Niners are really excited to have him. And Kyle seemed to think that he would be ready to roll Wednesday out at practice. So we'll look for that later this week. And then lastly, Kyle was asked about losing the NFC title game to the Philadelphia Eagles and if that is fueling his team. And, he gave it kind of a roundabout answer, but then he kind of admitted, yeah, you don't get to the conference title game very often. It's pretty rare. They've been in 3 of the last 4. But it's very rare to get into either a Super Bowl game or a championship game. And when you lose those games, he said it's only natural that it really fuels your fire the next year. And we've seen it in the past. Old Niner fans remember the 83 NFC Championship game against the Washington Redskins, where the Niners fell into a hole, came back in the second half, and almost pulled off the upset behind Joe Montana, but lost the game and had a couple of very questionable calls late in that game. Well, if you believe the guys that were on those 83 and 84 teams, they'll tell you their loss in the 83 NFC title game fueled their 15-1 84 Super Bowl season the next year. And I bet you if you walked around the locker room, there'd be more than a number of guys, especially as we get down towards the second half of the year and the end of the year, that would admit that their loss in Philadelphia fueled their resolve to win it all this year. And that story is still playing itself out. So there you go. There's an update from Ninerland on Kyle Shanahan and what he said today at the presser. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of The Krug Show. And thanks to all you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.